like to talk about a variety of things. I know we're here at this moment in the world where the world kind of got messed up and people looking for Superman and Superwoman. And there might be, maybe in this audience, there are people who are creative people. Kind of this whole idea of creative people is kind of like a bad word sometimes, like, oh, you're creative. Oh, okay. You're an artist? Oh, okay, It's sort of like that, but this is a very creative community of leaders, as I understand it, which is a kind of an awkward thing. So I'm going to talk about that awkwardness a bit. I'm going to talk about a few awkward moments I've had in my life. I know we're in iPad sort of craze right now, and I did the whole thing where I kept looking and wondering, should I buy one or not? And I didn't buy one in the end, but like you, I was looking for something to kind of solve the problem I don't have, and it made me think about how, I stopped getting interested in computers because I noticed this weird pattern. Remember when you used to buy a computer, you brought it home, didn't do anything? Who remembers that era? Yeah, it was really weird. You buy this thing, you plug it in, does nothing at all. It had text on it, no images, and after a few years, the CD-ROM thing happened, so you could have images, like lots of images, like sometimes 300 images. It was amazing. And then you could have a CD quality audio. It was fantastic. And then they invented playing movies, like grainy movies on that computer. And then the internet got invented, and it was kind of back to text, HTML, a few images, and then bigger images, and then CD quality sound, and then you can watch movies on the web. It's amazing. And then the mobile phone thing happened, where you can text people, and then you can send images, and oh my gosh, you can watch movies on your phone. So I guess I've felt in this loop that you've all felt, that it's kind of awkward. But also I've had awkwardness as a person who makes things. I'll never forget in the early 1990s, I was in an auditorium like this in Yerba Buena, California, where I showed my work. You know how I like how we're not showing work here. I used to show my work, and I had this great work, and I sat down, and the guy that spoke before me, he was an older fella, illustrator, old school. Sat down next to him, and he whispers over to me, "Your work is so empty." I was like, wow. And I was like, whoa, ouch, And then someone whispers over, "Oh, don't mind him. I like your work, whatever." I said, oh, So I kept wondering what it meant. And it was a good critique, because I felt my work was empty too. So I began to look for, what was it? What could it be? And I had the fortune of misfortune, as I think the theme of this conference is. You discover something by accident. Something hits you in the face, and it's like, oh, ouch. And I had the misfortune of discovering leadership in my life. I was a regular professor. I could do the 1% creativity magic. And Nicholas Negroponte, the founder of the Media Lab, wanted to retire or pull back, and he put the two guys in charge that didn't want to be in charge. And I was one of them. And you're not going to work my creative magic, 1% poof, poof, poof. And I realized that this poof couldn't put the toilet paper in the bathrooms. It couldn't manage payroll. All this poof does nothing. Nothing is working, And so I realized I was deficient in something, so I began to study. I realized that all my life I was told, you're the creative guy. Don't worry about the money. We'll take care of it. And I realized, well, wait a second, So that's why I began to be curious about finances and all these wonderful things that helped me understand that money is interesting. It's a kind of medium. Mind you that my first encounter with the word money was with the great designer Paul Rand. Paul Rand was the guy who designed the IBM logo, the Westinghouse logo, UPS, ABC, like the Michael Jordan of graphic design. I met him when he was 82 years old at his house in Connecticut. I'd come from Tokyo, and I was supposed to be there for only a half an hour, but he said, my assistant hasn't arrived yet, so you have to work for me for free all day. And I said, okay, that's pretty cool, So I was working on his book, his last book, From Lascaux to Brooklyn. I was doing the mechanicals, and he kind of walks up to me, and we're alone in his studio, and he gets really quiet and says, young man, I have something very important to tell you. And this is the sort of Yoda moment, like, yes, you know? You know? He said, make lots of money, he says to me. I'm like, whoa, Yoda doesn't talk like that, you know? But I said, and he says, no, you're getting me wrong. He said, you know what? In your life, you will do things that you don't like to do, but they'll make money. And you can use that money to make the things you want to do. It's really as simple as that. He pointed out that all the books he had designed and made cost too much to publish. That was all from his own funds to make all those things. The labor of love comes from the money you make doing other things. Very pragmatic, very useful advice. Money is such a useful thing to live, but also to make as well. That's where I first felt that in 1996. And I got very interested in people because I realized that this poof, poof, poof thing, when you have a computer, poof happens all the time, like, whoa, that happened and that happened. But people don't work that way. You can't poof them. And so I got very curious of organizations, and that was my passion. And then I got a call from a headhunter about this job to be the president of RISD. And it's funny because you have to understand that I was hired around the same time as the election season, where they were looking for someone who was younger, inexperienced, had a few ideas. Let's give them a chance. So I was elected. I'm not elected. I was chosen, elected sort of. And then once I was hired, I remember like people were saying, you know, oh wow, he got hired in this job as president. Let's hire someone like that. That's radical. Until the financial crisis in the world happened, and people said, we don't want a guy like that. So I'm kind of a leftover from that, I think. A proud leftover, mind you. And I'm trying to reconcile that as a creative individual. How do you lead an institution through crises as someone who is trying to stay true to their core as an artist and designer? This is something all of you, I believe, struggle with, think through, have adapted, gone to counseling, etc. But you're here, and I'm proud of you. Now, I like to think of it as sort of like, who watches 24? 24? Okay, 24 viewers. You know, I think Mark mentioned the whole thing about, you know, being a rogue sort of person. I always think that it's kind of like a creative person is like, what if Jack Bauer became president? Awkward, right? So that's kind of the way it is as a creative person. You want to be rogue, but you're the man. So it's this awkward imbalance, really. And by being president of an art school, I see art in its sort of virgin state, you know, in that wonderful flower where it has nothing bad attached to it. And I have people who come up to me and say all kind of things, wonderful things sometimes. Like I sit down in the cafeterias a lot with students randomly. Sometimes they don't want to sit with me, so I say, okay, thanks. But sometimes they say, oh, I've been waiting for you to come by. Sit with me and eat. And then I get kind of nervous, right? Like, uh-oh, they're going to complain or something. But you sit down and you ask them, so what's up? And there was a young woman, and she was a freshman. It was March. And she said, you know, I have to make a confession to you, Mr. President. And you say, whoa, you know, what's going to happen? Okay, go ahead. She said, well, you know, I'm a freshman, and I came here, and I don't live here. I don't live in Rhode Island, out of town. Wasn't sure where everything was on campus. I had no friends. I take my classes and getting bad grades. Did things that didn't make sense. Didn't know what to do. And now it's second term. And now I have friends. I know where things are. I know kind of what my professors want, and things are going well. And I have to tell you, I feel so guilty. Guilty. So I scratched my head and didn't understand what this meant, and I was coming back, and my elevator opened up in the building I'm in, and my provost, a woman named Jessie Sheffrin, she's magical. I said, of course, she's standing right there in front of the elevator. You know, it's weird. I said, Jessie, you know, I just met this young woman who I told a story, and she said to me, well, John, you know, it's because all artists yearn to struggle. Only when they struggle do they feel alive. And so it's those moments where you get in touch with that, you know, this thing to push against, that's what we once had, and we lose so much as we get older, stronger. But you can see it every day, which I find quite an honor and privilege to see. The second thing is you get people who are really deep into that, kind of more militant, actually. I had one come up to me at an exhibition, and he said, John, because we're doing strategic planning, by the way. I like to tell these little things about strategic plannings. John, a lot of us, students, and a lot of faculty are here also, we don't like what you're doing. So great, I like critique, so give me some ideas. He says, well, you're trying to get us to all work together. So we're artists. We don't work together. We're not going to be a part of your thing. And so that's really good. I like that. I can get that. I understand that. So could you come to one of the planning groups to represent that viewpoint? And he says, no. That's making me part of your thing. You're trying to catch me. So there's that kind of there. So I live in a pure creative forest. And through the experience, I can ask this question. So how do you do this? How do you lead creative people? This is a question that will become more prominent in the future because we are becoming more creative. We have to be more adaptive. So it's a good question. But also as an individual leader, as a creative, it's a good exercise. People often ask me, so John, do you still design? Do you still make art? I said, well, I do. I have this big institution. It's my big art installation. And they said, no, what do you mean by that? Do you really make something? I said, yes, I do make something. Because, I have a Twitter feed, and I have a certain Twitter things that I never post because I feel they may be controversial. I thought I'd share one with you. It has to do with anger. Because Twitter is my form of physical, my public therapy. But this ties to a moment in Japan when I was 26. I was in a small company, and I was so angry at this guy in the company, just oh gosh, this guy's, what is he doing? I can't stand this guy, whatever, right? So I go to my boss. It's in Japan. I say, Mr. Muramoto, why does that guy keep doing that? It's crazy. Why does he? Mr. Muramoto's like, I said, Mr. I can't. I'm going crazy. He goes, And then this happens for roughly 20 minutes. And then Mr. Muramoto says to me, are you done, Mr. Maeda? It's in Japan. Says, yes. Do you know how stupid you looked just now? So that's been important to me, that moment where I realized, oh, okay, I'm not going to do that anymore. So I don't get angry. It's not useful. But I wrote to my invisible Twitter feed, anger is an emotion I rarely feel, but often feel. Because as leader, you are the center point for all kinds of problems. And depending on the institution you're at, it's somewhat public sometimes. And so I get hate mail like anybody else might get hate mail. And I'm kind of impervious to most kind of hate mail. But to me, because I'm an artist, if it's visual, it gets personal. Because it goes in differently. It goes through the pores, So I've developed a technique as an artist for hate mail. I scan it in. And I change the caption. And I move all the areas. And I reprint it out. And I say, done. It's a way to take the venom out. Roughly 40%, sometimes 60% if I'm lucky. But I believe artists, creatives, know how to roll, how to adapt. It's a powerful thing. Now, I have a few ideas about leadership in this area, so a few rules in this area. One is how, you heard this in the conference a lot, creative people actually love mistakes. Most people want to avoid mistakes. We love to learn from them. We actually get excited. Oh, it messed up? Fantastic. Let's think of how to do it better. That is not a normal thing. But all of you have that. It's a wonderful curse. The second one is that you don't need to be right, but you hope to be right. You have that flower thing, like that young woman. You have this idealism in you. It's a wonderful thing. Other thing is that you're completely okay with ambiguity. Everybody's coming to you. I need a yes/no answer. And you say, maybe. And that isn't okay with many people. But with the creatives, it's quite natural, it's normal. And I would say is a norm today now because of the instabilities. I had a great experience in Europe recently. Where is that place? Switzerland. Okay, over there. And Becky Bermont and I did a workshop on creative leadership. And what happened is, leaders looking for solutions. There's a certain group of people at the World Economic Forum called the Fellows, and they had a workshop. And so I was invited to give a workshop in Switzerland. And what happened is they get 1 week at HBS, 1 week at Wharton, and 1 week back in Switzerland. And so I was part of the home workshop. And so I walk in and I pass out paper, and I want them to draw their cell phone actually. So they all get out their phones. They're really smart people. They're policymakers. They're all in their mid-30s, amazing people from all around the world. And they're drawing their phones. And one guy whispers to the other guy so I can hear, last week we were at Wharton. This week, someone sent us the coloring teacher. It was nice. The guy says, I have to email Sarkozy right now. Excuse me. That's never a little passive aggressive. But the wonderful thing is that after 3 hours of drawing, they were all drawing because they realized that drawing is difficult. Not just the mechanical aspect, but the question, what do I draw? What is a drawing? What are you drawing? Why is he drawing that? It becomes a space to converse and talk, and eventually a critique. The second day we had a critique. The 3 critics were selected from that group. One was a water shortage expert, the other an expert in infant mortality. They were the critics. And in the second day, they all came up to me and said, what is this way of thinking? We want to adopt this way of thinking into our policymaking work. Now that is happening. That wave is forming. And all of you are part of this tribe of people who are in that odd space, that awkward space of being that creative person who's, I wouldn't say forced to be a leader, but you've stepped into being a leader. And it's a wonderful space because it makes it even more awkward in that way, wonderfully awkward in that creative way. So I just want to leave you on that note, this thought, that all of you here have the ability to live with ambiguity, to love to learn from taking mistakes. This is something that's a good thing. It's going to be okay. The world needs your kinds of talents today. It's only going to get better and worse because we have to make that worst part better. And so I salute the members of this conference, and thank you very much.